Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, January 13th, 2022. And our top story today, 6 public sector workforce trends to watch in 22. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Dr. Joshua Franzel of the Mission Square Research Institute. Josh, great to see you. Happy New Year. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you, and I love talking research. And you and the team at the Mission Square Research Institute have come up with 6 public sector workforce trends. Before we get into those trends, what was the genesis behind doing this study? I have to imagine that the pandemic, the result of the pandemic, both from a health perspective, financial perspective, really helped shape a lot of this.
Yeah, we've been doing this this trend series for a little over a decade now. And what we like to do is reflect on the past year's worth of research and really put it in a digestible format so that we're able to provide sort of strategic considerations that state and local leaders should be thinking about for the year ahead as they look to make their governments employers of choice going forward. And I will say it's sort of a lot of the recommendations that we'll talk about are really they really coalesce around retention, recruitment, and sort of the underlying diversity, equity, and inclusion considerations going forward as well.
Yeah, this is really good stuff, Josh. And I think, number one, showcasing public sector talent. And I can't think of anything more about this pandemic outside of the health issues and the financial issues, what it illustrated for educators, administrative folks, police, firefighters. They're really on the front lines here, and doing good, doing public service really for many is front and center.
Absolutely, and I think that this trends piece comes out at a time against the backdrop of, you look at job openings, for example, between mid-2021 and the end of 2021, it was the highest level of job openings we've seen in the state and local sector since at least the year 2000. On the quit side, pretty much from the middle of 2020 all the way through the end of 2021, it was the highest level across that whole period of the highest level of quits since we've seen since at least 2020, the year 2000. And then when you reflect on some of our surveys that we've done of human resource directors, we've seen the highest levels of their answering that their retirement eligibles are actually retiring at an accelerated rate that we've seen since we've started doing that series. So there are a lot of considerations now in terms of where the sector is and how the sector is ultimately going to be able to be in a position to recruit and retain folks that they need to fill those important skills and roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of the competitive things that states, municipalities can do. But to your point, and your second trend here is around burnout. And look, if you're on the front lines, police, firefighter, hospitals, teachers, you are at risk of burnout. And so having employee assistance programs, wellness, mental health programs, these are really important changes that state and local governments can make to keep and also possibly attract new employees.
You're spot on there. And I think, when we've been doing a series of national polls of state and local workers every 6 months since the beginning of the pandemic. And what we've seen in our most recent polling is 50% of state and local workers do not feel that their pay and compensation matches the risks that they were taking throughout the course of the pandemic in providing services to the public. So I think that's important to focus on, and that's translating into a little under a third, 31%, considering changing jobs as we move forward out of the public sector. So burnout is key. The fact that you bring up EAPs, the fact that we're focusing a lot on health and financial wellness programs, flexibility and work arrangements, which I hope we could talk about a little bit more in the interview. There's a lot to focus on, but it's important for state and local leaders to focus on mitigating the challenges brought on by burnout.
Yeah, there's a lot of need here for dynamics. We've seen businesses adapt. I would think public sector employers need to continue to adapt it well. It's not saying that they haven't adapted at all. Next trend, this one's really interesting to me, sustainable retirement benefits. And for many of us who have been in the public sector retirement arena, we know there's a defined benefit plan and oftentimes a defined contribution plan. And they really work hand in hand here, Josh, to attract employees, but also provide needed retirement benefits.
Absolutely. And there's a really good news story here. In 2021, well, let me first say, our partners at Boston College's Center for Retirement Research, NASRA, GFOA, and the Institute maintain the public plans database, publicplansdata.org for anyone interested in diving into the data. And it allows us to track a range of variables for the top 200 state and local pension systems. And in fact, we're adding new defined contribution plans going forward. The good news story is in 2021, we're seeing the aggregate funder ratios for public plans be about 75%. And this is up from 72% a year ago. Also, we're seeing about 95% of the required contributions that need to be made by public employers being made to support those benefits. So DB plans in the aggregate are well positioned going into the new year. Now, you mentioned defined contribution plans. We're seeing expanded roles, not only on the primary side. Of course, the various states and localities offer defined contributions as primary plans, but on the supplemental side as well, in terms of rounding out increased importance in these DC plans to round out the retirement security of public employees going forward.
Yeah, these plans, again, are the backbone. We're going to talk about non-traditional or looking beyond the traditional in our commercial break, but these really form the backbone of the benefits that many workers appreciate when they come to work in public service. Josh, I need to take a very quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about non-traditional benefits. How are state and local governments adapting? Well, you're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking this morning to Dr. Joshua Franzel of the Mission Square Research Institute. Josh, thanks so much for sticking with us this morning.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. And look, I probably should have done this at the outset of the first segment, but all this information that we're talking about, some of it's rotating as we're talking, which is great. But where can viewers check out more of the data that we're referencing in this conversation?
Yeah, so the trends piece that we're talking about today and all the underlying research that was done throughout the course of 2021 and some previews for 2022 are available via missionsq.org. So I'd encourage your viewers to take a look. Research comes out on a monthly basis, and so if they like to sign up for our newsletter, we'll be sure they get the latest research that comes out from the Institute in their inboxes once a month.
Yeah, you don't sound busy at all, Josh. All right, let's and there's a whole team of people behind you too. Let's not forget that.
A great team of people, in fact.
Great team. So it's not just Josh baking up stats in the laboratory.
Not. Yeah.
All right, Josh, let's talk about thinking outside the box here and thinking beyond traditional benefits. We've seen private sector employers do things like financial wellness benefits or student loan repayment programs. Where does all this stand in the public sector?
Yeah, so certainly retirement benefits and healthcare benefits, are these what we consider the traditional benefits, are certainly key and a centerpiece of compensation for state and local workers. But what we're seeing with especially more innovative public employers is they're looking at sort of the whole compensation and benefits package to see if it's optimized or as close to optimized as it can be to recruit and retain individuals of all career stages. And so to your point, we're seeing a lot more focus on emerging non-traditional benefits such as emergency savings plans or student loan repayment plans or enhanced financial wellness programs to really help address some of the needs of employees starting out their careers, in the middle of their careers, or approaching retirement. So it's looking at the benefits packages much more holistically.
Yeah, and really, when you think about who you're competing against, if you're an employer in the public sector, you're competing against not only other public sector employers, but you're competing against the private sector as well. So you want to make sure that you have the best benefits possible to attract those workers.
Absolutely, and your point about competition and other sectors is a lot of folks think that once states and localities post a job opening, there will be a match between available labor and their local market and the job openings. But we're seeing, as this is the case not only with the state and local sector, but as we're reading in the press, the national and in some ways a global labor market, employers are having to think outside of the box about how to attract the key talent they need in a highly competitive labor market.
Yeah, it's going to take a whole paradigm shift here, Josh. All right, Josh, let's talk about this next trend. And I think this is an area, the public sector is ahead in a lot of ways, but this is an area where the public sector, in my opinion, is really ahead. And that's diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, goals, objectives, et cetera. And we see this play out in sustainable investing, ESG, other similar concepts. But what say you in terms of this important trend?
So back in the fall of 2021, we released what we consider the first of its kind report looking at sort of diversity and equity inclusion focused specifically on the state and local sector. And what the trend that we highlight in this piece dives into is essentially three layers. One is governments need to think strategically about how well their workforce is matching the community that they're serving. And so it's important for governments to look to see the match or lack thereof when they're providing services to the public. Another aspect is the report and this trend recognize that there are certainly productivity and performance enhancements that come by having a more diverse workforce. So as governments look to put into place steps to make themselves even more efficient going forward, it's important to focus on the diversity, equity, and inclusion of the workforce as well. And then finally, when you think of automation, you think of shared service arrangements, you think of contracting out. The report and this trend really focus on how these sort of enhancements from automation and whatnot impact different demographic cohorts differently. And so governments need to be conscious of that and track that in order to mitigate the impact on certain demographic cohorts relative to others.
Josh, the Great Resignation is something that we have heard about consistently since around the start of the pandemic. People just said, look, I want to do something different. And that's no different in the public sector. People have said it, and you've even alluded to this throughout our conversation. People said, I want to do something a little bit different, and I'm really ready to quit my job, and maybe there's too much stress or whatever. Governments need to focus on what's driving the Great Resignation and come up with a counter to that or a response to that, whether it's greater work flexibility, maybe work sharing, things like that.
I'm glad you brought that up. We're going to be coming out with a new research infographic focusing on the drivers and some potential solutions to address the Great Resignation as it pertains to the state and local sector. We're seeing a lot more proactive public employers focusing on what can be done to address folks leaving. And so flexibility with scheduling, flexibility with how and where work is performed, looking at opportunities for paid family leave, for perhaps subsidized childcare, and enhanced mental health benefits. All of these can go a long way to helping governments best position themselves as employers of choice and sort of reducing, you're not going to eliminate, but reducing the level of folks that are quitting or going to other sectors or other employers, and reducing the impact of this Great Resignation that we're seeing today.
Josh, are we kind of seeing a reimagining, if you will, of government? I mean, government has to adapt. We always see we see the private sector adapt. I think we've seen not-for-profit adapt, and I think we've seen government adapt. And it's adapting to this new paradigm shift, as you said, using technology, sharing of resources, all procurement, everything really has had to adapt during this period. It's really a re-envisioning of the public sector.
Absolutely, and we've been doing for a little over a decade a annual workforce survey with the International Public Management Association for Human Resources and the National Association of State Personnel Executives. We've been doing it of HR professionals throughout states and localities. And what we're seeing is, pertaining to what the point you bring up here, is going into the pandemic, there was a much narrower view of what jobs were eligible to be categorized as remote eligible or remote work eligible. And as we've gone through the pandemic, we're just seeing an expansion, a pretty notable expansion of the types of positions and the categories of positions that are considered to be eligible for remote work. And that we don't expect to go away once we're out of this pandemic.
Yeah, well, Josh, it's great to kick off the year with a look at these workforce trends. And I know we'll be talking with you and the team throughout the year to see how things kind of match up through thick and thin and what happens the rest of the year. Josh Franzel, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. And we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thank you very much.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in lifestyle, wellness, tech, finance, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to see our latest content or search our archives? Then check out our streaming partners like Amazon, Roku, Samsung, and over 100 more. We're back again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.